Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lost in Translation show, where we explore history to help mankind understand what's happening in the world today. My name's Simone, and thank you for joining us today. I'll be your host. I'm broadcasting from the little town of Los Osos, California, where many people may not have visited, but it's a beautiful little coastline city in the center of California. So I hope that everyone's enjoying their summer. Today, I had a very special guest. As the world sits on the precipice of World War, many governments and people worldwide are supporting various factions and countries who seek to either kill each other off or drive out their opponents. Those who call for peace drop bombs. Those who call for free speech condemn those who speak freely. Those who promise victory continue to send the world's youth to their deaths. Do most of us really understand the true cost of war, the devastation, the cruelty, the inhumanity? And what's more, do most of us really understand that for the common man, wars have no victors, just victims, just death, and just destruction? And regardless of who wins the wars, society in general suffers long after the battles are fought. As many of you know, my channel focuses on the structures that control our lives. And the war machine is one of the main control mechanisms of these power structures that are led by eugenicists and psychopaths. Our guest today is someone who knows firsthand that evil does exist and what history teaches about humanity's past mistakes. Our guest is Sami Steigman. Sami is a Holocaust survivor who lives to tell his story. When he was 1.5 years old, his family went to a German concentration camp. He was later saved by a German woman, and eventually he ended up in Romania. He speaks at schools, organizations, and media outlets, telling his story. He also continues to be passionate about his role of sharing fresh perspectives on hope, life, and faith. Before we get started today, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. This really helps me out. And if you want to support the channel, my Zelle and Venmo accounts are listed in the comments section below. So, welcome, Sami, and thank you for joining us today.
Well, I am very honored to be with you on your podcast and also addressing your audience. There's a lot to talk about. One of the things that I do not like what's happening in this particular country, actually, there are two of them. One of them is that people have forgotten how to disagree in a civil way. And number two, okay, and I will talk about it later, okay, is if you pay attention to the news, nobody is accountable, okay? To the best of my knowledge, unless somebody can correct me, I do not know that under the previous administration that anybody was fired, okay, regardless whether they made mistakes or not. So this is something that we have to teach the young people, and I will tell you more about it, why it's important, okay, to take responsibility for our own actions. About myself, my mother and I were born, okay, in a city called Chernobyl. Today it's in Ukraine. In uh, in Ukraine, it's called Chernovtsi. Uh, that particular city was part of an area called Bukovina, which was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and it belonged to Romania. My father, on the other hand, was born in Romania proper. I am not only a Holocaust survivor, I'm also a child of Holocaust survivors. Both of my parents survived. All three of us were in a labor camp in the former Soviet Union. Today it's in Ukraine. I am also a motivational speaker, an educator. My mission in life is to educate the next generation. They are my hope, they are my future. At the same time, I also served in the Israeli Air Force, 1962, 1965. And recently, I also became an actor. And if you want, I'll tell you how. So,
Well, it's never too late to be discovered.
Okay. So right now I'm trying to find a casting agency. I'm not trying to make it into a career, but I would like to be somehow involved, maybe commercials, voiceover, whatever it is. But my real mission in life, and it's my world, is to educate the next generation. Okay, so to tell you a little bit what happened. In 1941, when Germany broke their agreement with the former Soviet Union, Operation Barbarossa, behind them were special groups, killing groups, that their only function was to murder people, Jews and Russians. And behind them were the Romanian troops. And the Romanian troops annexed an area of the former Soviet Union, not occupied, annexed, which means it became part of Romania. It was called Transnistria. And that's why we were deported by the Romanians and not by the Germans. If you will ask any survivor, how come you're alive today? I would say, okay, probably almost all of them will use only one word: luck. My luck was that I was never separated from my parents. At the same time, I was subjected to medical experiments. And you look at me right now, on my face, you will not see it. I smile a lot and everything else, but I am in pain every single second and will be in pain for the rest of my life. And later on, I will explain why I'm still in pain. At the same time, not far away from the camp, there was a farm owned by Germans. And after they finished with she brought food to the guards in the SS. So obviously, she had access to go wherever she wanted in the camp. After they finished with the medical experiments, came a stage that I was dying of starvation, and there are physical signs: big head, swollen stomach, swollen feet. When she saw the physical signs that I am dying of starvation, not only at the risk of her own life, but at the risk of her entire family's life, she had compassion for a strange Jewish boy and decided to give me milk. Possibly more, but I did not ask, and I don't want to embellish and to say things that I don't know. I wouldn't, I don't know that particular person. I was never able to honor her posthumously or in person, but in 2014, I was in Israel to give testimony at the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem, Yad Vashem. And next to the museum, there is a garden honoring 27,000 people that saved Jews. And I saw a marker honoring the unknown righteous among the nations. And that made me very happy because indirectly, the woman that saved my life has been honored.
That's amazing story. And many people, I have German heritage. My family came to America long before the war, but the Nazi Party was not, they want to show all the footage and everything, but there were a lot of Germans who were good people that were they were being confiscated into the military. Their assets were being seized. They were watching their neighbors get thrown away, dragged away and put in camps. Disabled people, people who had disabled children, they were taken out of their homes. People from mixed race backgrounds. So this really affected so many different people, and I'm really glad that you're bringing it up today, like the movie Schindler's List, to not, we have to be so careful not just to broad brush groups of people. Because when you really
Exactly.
look at the power, I focus on the power structures that control our lives, and I follow the bloodlines and the different families that have occupied all around the world. They've intermarried, and there's groups of people who are against humanity in every culture and every race on every religion on the planet. And although most of us are at the average person level of organized religion, there are a lot of crimes committed by organized religion, as we can see with the connection between the Catholic Church and the Nazi Party. And when anybody wants to argue with me about that, I'm like, well, if the Vatican wasn't involved in the Nazi party, then why did they end up with everything the Nazis stole? So that's usually a really difficult question that most people can't answer. It's just really hard for people to accept. For instance, the Catholic Church, I think the last time I checked, has spent $10 billion covering up the crimes against children. Yet most of the people I know still go and give 10%. I grew up in Northern California. There's a lot of Catholics here. And I went to a Catholic school, and they still continue to give the money regardless of the evidence that's shown. Do you have any similar experiences to that? I mean, I know that, at the high levels of most organized religion, there is some kind of that God is no longer present there, and that some other entity has stepped in and taken control of people who claim to be God-fearing, but in the event they're doing everything against God.
Yes, I want to tell you two things. Number one, I was in Germany three times. I never had an extended family. From my father's side, from 42 people, only two survived. Obviously, my parents and one of the uncles. He was never a survivor. He was a refugee in one of only three countries that officially accepted Jewish refugees. I don't know if most of the people know about it. Number one was Dominican Republic, China, in Philippines. So my uncle was not a survivor, a refugee in Shanghai. Okay, when the communists came to power, he came to the United States and settled in a very beautiful city. I hope you visited there, Santa Barbara. You have the ocean, you have the mountains, beautiful, beautiful city. The climate is wonderful. The other thing that I also wanted to say is that the reason that I talk about this particular German woman is because, like you said, people like, okay, to generalize things instead of talking specifics. And I just want to give an example that not every German was a bad person. The other thing that I'm saying, which very few people know because I grew up in a socialist communist country in Romania, is not every person that belonged to the Nazi party was a Nazi. Okay? Because even in Romania, if you wanted to have a good job, you had to join the Communist Party. Did not mean that you were a communist. Okay? So for me, a Nazi is somebody that believed in the Nazi ideology. And we have to differentiate those things. We have to be very careful with the words that we are using. The other thing that you also mentioned, the funny part is that I am very open, I'm very honest. I don't expect anybody to agree with what I have to say, just to respect they have a different opinion. The only backlash, you may be surprised, I got that from Jewish people. Okay? What happened is I was invited at the synagogue, and I live in New York, so you know it's ultra liberal. And it was just when Trump came to power. And they asked me what my opinion about Trump is. And I said, this is not the forum, and I don't go into politics. Oh, no, no, but you're an Israeli. You're a Jew, you're a Holocaust survivor. So I said, are you sure that you want to hear my opinion? And they said, yes. Are you positive? Absolutely. So I said, the one thing that I don't like is people have forgotten how to disagree in a civil way. After my presentation, people came to me and they said, don't you ever talk about politics. They did not want to hear my opinion. They did not want to hear my opinion. They wanted me to say what they wanted to hear. And this is part of the problem. The media is complicit in it and what's happening. And this is part of the problem. They don't listen to the other person. When I was very young, I liked to debate. And if you were a communist, I was an anti-communist. So you had to give me your best, okay, reasons why you are a communist. If you were an anti-communist, I became a communist. But I learned from you, and we will be able, and by debating, but in a civil way, learning from each other, listening, hearing what the other person says, I was able to make my own informed opinions and not based on a slogan, okay, or whatever. So I suggest even today in the newspapers, in the media, you hear one side, okay, very seldom do you hear the other side. And you have a nice debate so people can make their own decisions. I remember when I lived in Wisconsin, uh, I believe my memory is not failing me. Uh, in the newspaper, they had, for instance, a topic on the front page, and they had both sides, pro and con, and that allowed you to make an informed decision. Unfortunately, I don't see it anymore.
Well, over the course of the last few years, I have interviewed former MK mind control people, and living in Hollywood, I'm aware of Project Mockingbird, where they've been infiltrated the media, and that Hollywood itself is an extension of the military industrial complex. So they can't have us using reason and logic because they're trying to control our brains by emotion, and they're trying to turn us against each other. The MK mind control came out of the Nazi. I believe it's much older, actually. I study history. This goes way back to Egyptian times, and probably a lot of the documents that were stolen in World War I down in the Middle East, where they uncovered a lot of doctrine. I believe that actually a lot of the Nazi actually comes from the Book of the Dead, which is an Egyptian script. And they use these similar mind control tactics, the child trafficking, and these different things that are going on to literally break our mind. And as you can see today, I mean, I personally want a party system that's got more than two parties. I believe that the two-party system is meant to keep us struggling. You know, there's either one opinion or another opinion. There's no varied opinion. There's no freaking of thought. I can agree with you on one topic, but a week later, someone will get mad at me because I don't, oh, well, I'm on their side. Well, I'm not on their side. I'm on the side of logic, reason, and patience. I am not on one side or another side. I change my mind frequently about topics because once I get into a topic and I start learning about it, and I remove all the riffraff and I remove all the hyperbolic statements, then I can actually look at it myself. And the best way to learn about the future is to study history. And what we're learning today, a lot of people get really upset about, whether they're on this side of the war or that side of the war. The reality is wars are massive propaganda machines, and we're just finding out what really happened in World War II. And I'm 61 years old, and my mom was a little girl during World War II. So it takes a long time for the truth to finally come out, and it's been harshly altered so it fits what the victors or the people who are now in power decided it should say. And with I feel really distressed. I scan the internet a lot looking for different viewpoints and opinions. And what I see is on the side, especially of the Democrats, and it does exist at some level on the right, but I see people crying and throwing themselves on the ground. And I mean, this is not adult discourse. This is actually mind trauma. This is actually these people's minds have been invaded. And I know you talked about how you and I were talking before the show about dehumanization, and that I'd been watching The View. I do watch all kinds of different media because I want to hear everybody's opinions and viewpoints. And they were talking about, they were upset with someone, a liberal figure, because she was humanizing Trump. Well, let me break some news to you. Trump is a human being, whether you agree with him or not. And this dehumanization is exactly the tactics, the military industrial complex. Who financed World War II? Wall Street and the City of London. They financed both sides on all sides, right? So they want us at each other's throat because they're also, as I mentioned, eugenicists, as you saw in Nazi Germany. These people believe they are superior to us, and those who do not consent or disagree will be first disenfranchised and then eventually murdered or driven out of wherever they are at. So these people can implement their system and their system of mind control. This is what really concerns me of what's going on because I'm watching it from people on both sides. Like if Trump does something everyone disagree with, then it's a whole week of, oh, Trump, 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 Trump. And then if, Biden does something agree, when, when Trump was shot, the left was saying, oh, he deserves it. And I was pointing out to people on the left, you're wishing the death of somebody you don't even know. Do you understand how much these people have got in your head? And then 2 weeks later, Biden was sick. And the same people that were complaining to me about what the left said about Trump were now glad that Biden was sick. You have to understand that what they're getting into your minds. Most of us, 95% of the US population says they believe in God. Is it godly to have those thoughts in your brain, to wish death upon another? I don't think so. Regardless of what religion you belong to, I believe they also condemn wishing for other people's death. So they have us going against our own beliefs by using the television, by using the media, by using these constant hyperbolic positions. They're changing the way we act and feel, and they're bringing us into this time that you were talking about before World War II, where they convinced so many people that their neighbors were actually the problem and not the bankers and the industrialists and the royal families who'd lost their power and wanted it back, and people like George Bush Sr., who were avid supporters and financiers of the Nazi Party. And today they lead our country. So this is how much things have changed, and this is how much history has been removed from our history books. So people are falling into these mindsets.
One of the things which is very interesting is that people have forgotten that the Nazis did not invent anything except the gas chambers. They took things from other countries. Like, for instance, when they are talking, for instance, about the swastika, it's used today. It's a symbol of goodwill. Okay, they just changed it. When they are talking about, uh, you know, different things, like, for instance, with medical experiments and everything else. They took it from the United States. Okay, so they did not invent anything. They just changed it. And we have to understand that Hitler and his minister of propaganda, Joseph Goebbels, said something that we have forgotten, and the media does not concentrate on it. A lie or a misrepresentation told long enough becomes the truth. Okay, and that's exactly what's happening today, and the media is not paying attention to it in the right way, and therefore, in my opinion, they are complicit in what's happening today in this world.
Of course they are. And I mean, it's been since the 70s they exposed that the CIA has backed and financed most of the news channels. We just had USAID. Before they broke the USAID story for about 6 months, I've been uncovering the big studios and the regular TV stations have been broke for years. As we just saw, Colbert, which is a big nighttime guy, they were subsidizing his show $40 million a year. I mean, who does that, right? You begin to understand these are propaganda mechanisms, and if you understand what was going on is the reason all the late night shows transferred to propaganda and they weren't funny anymore is because they were being funded by US aid to go against Trump and to go against, whoever was in the way of the military industrial complex who is really owns Hollywood. And I lived and worked in Hollywood. You just have to go to the valley and see that Northrop Grumman is right next to Paramount. And then the other side of that is the other military industrial complex. What was the hub of the military industrial complex until, most of my life and growing up where my mom was growing up in Southern California was based in the Burbank studio area? And where are all the movie studios? And where does all the pornography come out of? Right? From all the children that were in the government healthcare and childcare systems. It's also hubbed right there. And what is pornography? It's a way to attack society's mental thoughts and to mean women and demean humanity. Pornography, if you look into the communist mantra and that, one of their primary things of ways to destroy the family and destroy the social conscious is to use it. So all of those things are centered right there if you decide to look at what's going on in the world, if you want to remove your blinders and actually see what's going on.
1 second.
Okay.
Forgot to turn off my sound on the cell phone.
Oh, well, yeah, lots of important people calling you. As you were talking about, it's all been done before. I know that we've talked a lot about the Holocaust, but actually, the amount of deaths that occurred in the Asian countries, including China and Japan and Russia, they probably experienced over half the, what did they say, 75 to 85 million deaths. And the communists, of course, have never had an original thought. This doctrine comes right out of this same group of people. And you've got tens of millions of people today in China living in concentration camps. So do you think that China's learned the
I
lesson?
will talk about it. I will talk
Okay.
about it. Now, the interesting part of it is uh, that, for instance, people do not realize that what happened in the world, nothing is happening in a vacuum. Okay, there are two things that like I mentioned to you before, that I'm very unhappy that people have forgotten how to disagree in a civil way and take responsibility. Let me give you just two examples of, okay, what I mean by taking responsibility. I'm not only a survivor of the Holocaust, I'm also a survivor of life challenges. And number one, I was homeless. I live under the poverty line, the most expensive city in the country, in Manhattan. Income, my official income is $1,602, and I still smile. Okay, and I will explain how I kept a positive attitude. The other one is I have a son, I have two grandchildren. He does not allow me to be in touch with them. Okay. But the most interesting thing is when I became homeless, these were people that I trusted with my life. So I have many reasons to be angry, to be bitter, to be revengeful, and yet I'm not. Something happened, and this is something that I am educating the young people. I decided to take responsibility. Responsibility. What did I do to come to the situation that they, okay, put me in a situation that was became homeless? And I realized one thing. I made two mistakes. These were people I trusted with my life. I gave them cash. I did not put anything in writing. And I said, you know something? They are not guilty. They took advantage of my stupidity. And I had to do two things. Number one, I had to forgive myself, and I had to be kind to myself. We are kind to many other people, to strangers. But we forget, if we make a mistake, to be kind to ourselves. And we dwell on it. And all of a sudden, by taking responsibility, any thought of revenge or whatever this is gone, and I became a free man. And this is something that it's important to have instilled in the young people. Okay, be responsible for your own action. Don't dwell on it. Okay, learn from it and move forward. And later on, if you want, I'll tell you how I overcame those obstacles.
Well, and that's a great message for people because a lot of us are stuck in places today. I literally just recently spent some time with a friend I've known for a long time. and who has a drinking problem. And every time we get together, he tells me the same stories. I've known him for 25 years now. Finally, I just left because he can't acknowledge his own behavior and move past it. And it's painful for me to watch. And if you try to say, well, maybe this or maybe that, like you would in a logical, again, he's suffering from childhood trauma. So he's in the trauma loop, right? You have to understand when you're dealing with someone, and I'm sure you probably, my friend just grew up in a bad household, nothing like what you went through. Although his grandfather was one of his last name, he was a famous Jewish guy who was put in a prison camp and was allegedly murdered the week before. But he was a very active Jew and actually gave voting rights for, I don't want to say his name because I don't want to call out the person, but he was one of the first people who had negotiated land ownership rights for Jews in the Eastern European countries right before the war. So, his family has generational trauma. I believe sometimes if it's unresolved, it can be passed down through the genes or passed down through just like we pass other attributes down. Have you had any experience with that?
Yes, as a matter of fact, because uh, from my father's side, 40 members of the family were murdered, okay, in Auschwitz and different other places. My father vowed to himself that he will never set foot in Germany. He will never buy a German product. And by the way, being born in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, uh, okay, a lot of the Jews adopted the German culture because the Emperor Franz Joseph is extremely benevolent to the Jews. And my first language actually was German. But the interesting part is that, for instance, uh, I lost my train of thought. What were you talking about?
Well, we were talking about how people's views get distorted and they're unable to move past
Yes. Oh,
their trauma,
yes.
and possibly it could be inherited.
Yes. Yes.
Sometimes you'll meet someone who wasn't traumatized, but they have
Right.
all the trauma symptoms. So I don't know if they're reflecting their parents' behavior.
Yes. Yes. So what happened is, living with my parents, I felt the same way. And I said, I will never set foot in Germany, never buy a German product. Interestingly enough, I started to speak only in 2008, and I also started to talk about reconciliation. So intellectually, it's very easy to talk about it. But now I'm faced to go to Germany and meet descendants of high ranking Nazi criminals. My initial reaction is that I'm not going. But I'm also the type of a person that I want to be authentic. And
Mhm.
when I talk about reconciliation, I wanted to make sure that I am also authentic about it. And I wanted to also to know how I will react. And guess what? One of the best moves I have ever made. And I found out that I have more in common than differences. I became friends with some of them, and I have learned a lot, okay, from them. They learned from me, I learned from them. But interestingly enough, I became friends with one particular person, Klaus, and people say that the Nazis did not talk. They did. But they did not talk about what they did, they talked about what happened to them. And Klaus loved his grandfather. When he passed away, he went in the attic and he found, okay, albums. And in the albums, he was completely shocked. His grandfather was part of the Einsatzgruppen. And he documented everything, not only what he saw, but what he did. So, therefore, what I'm saying is that we have to be very specific with the words that we are using, and we have to be willing to not only to listen to somebody else, also to hear what they say. And this is very difficult, okay, very difficult. And I am fortunate that I did not have to study for it. It's just part of my nature, okay. And I'm very blessed.
Well, a lot of people will say to me, believe me, I just on our earlier conversation today, I told you my history in Russia and my interaction with the State Department and the KGB, which would leave most people bitter. But I do not hold that against the average Russian people. And I understand, I entered into business with these people who were warmongering sociopaths. So again, I had to take responsibility for what I was doing. But this thing where Biden was president and we were at war in Ukraine, which is obviously a proxy war with the United States. Joe Biden and Vladimir Putin never talked the whole time. And I'm encouraging dialogue. I'm encouraging, oh, you're a Russia sympathizer. Oh, this and that. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm a people sympathizer. My whole channel is based on all wars are bankers' wars. There are no victors. And I go through the whole thing and I show how these different groups have moved around. They're in every culture, they're in every country. When they get caught, they move somewhere else, and that they have practiced, things like child sacrifice. They have had concentration camps. The World War II was not the first concentration camp, nor it has been the last. And we literally have people in the world today, all over the world, from Africans in the countries like Saudi Arabia who are in concentration camps, whose passports have been taken away, the people in Dubai their passport, the laborers that go to Dubai, their passports are taken and they're forced to live in like these labor camps and they can never leave and the people don't pay them. We've got people all over China in prison camps. I interviewed Kay Rubachek, and she was a Russian Jew who they went to China after, kind of like as you were saying, which a lot of people aren't aware that a lot of people, the Jewish people, especially people of Jewish descent, fled to China originally, to Shanghai and Hong Kong.
Right.
And then the Communist Party came in there shortly after. And then, of course, they
Right.
had to leave for those reasons. But there are concentration camps open right now in the world. And everybody would prefer to call you a China hater as
Yeah.
opposed to actually addressing what China and the Communist Party. I'm not a hater of anyone.
Right.
I believe in the people. The people.
I right. I have to tell you two things about it. Okay. I do not fight just Jew hatred. I fight hate. And as a matter of fact, hopefully most of the people know about the Uyghur people. And I was invited to speak on their behalf twice in front of the UN here in New York and one time at their national rally in Washington, D.C. Okay, I did not know anything about the Uyghur. Okay,
Mhm.
so I had to do the research, and I found out that when the Jewish uh, Russian people had to escape the dire consequences, they went to the south. And one of the states that they went to was Uzbekistan. In Uzbekistan live Muslims. Their language is very close to the Turkish one, and they received the Jews with open arms. And okay, when I spoke at the national rally, I told them one thing. United States is the leader of the country. Once United States says something or does something, other countries will follow. And just like what happened, nationally, it was let my people go from the former Soviet Union. Okay, at the same time, okay, I told them you will not accomplish anything unless you can convince United States to call what's happening in China genocide. I don't know how they did it, but they listened to me. And I told them, don't expect it right away. It's a communist country, but at least let's call it what it is. They convinced the United States to call it genocide, and right now it's known all over. So it is very important, the media to be there. The media also put it on. So now it's known all over the world that what's happening in China, okay, against the Uyghur people is
Well,
genocide.
unfortunately, in China right now, they're not just Uyghur people missing. If you watch the young people and you look at China and you look at the Chinese analysts and you look at reports from all over the world where different analysts have done everything from counting the amount of vaccinations or how many kids started kindergarten. They're massively lying about their population. And young people in China have videos where they're showing entire cities empty, entire villages. There's 20 villages a day, and they're going around and they're like, where is everyone? They have an epidemic of young children dying of heart attacks, all of the outcome of the forced vaccination. So something else, something so massive is going on in China right now. I'm not sure if it's the Communist Party that have turned on their own people because they were losing power, or there's some other element that's going on in China. But if you scan the Chinese channels right now, people outside China, they are saying over half the population is missing there. Have you heard anything about that or any ideas?
No, no, I did not hear about that. But interestingly enough, talking about murderers, almost everybody believes that Hitler was the biggest murderer. That is not true. People are forgetting about Stalin. Hitler, the Nazi party, okay, the Nazis, they murdered 11 million people, but they were not Germans. Stalin, on the other hand, on the average, murdered 25 million people, but they were all Russians.
Because
And
Stalin
they,
wasn't a Russian.
no, and he murdered his own people. And that's why I'm saying, people are fixated on something. They do not learn from history. And I have to tell you one thing, something very interesting. We are today at a time in our life that none of us expected to be there. Now, uh, people do not learn from history. And I don't know if you remember in 1961, Kennedy came to Khrushchev and told him, okay, take out the missiles from Cuba. Khrushchev played dumb. He said, what missiles? So he said, okay, okay, so I'll take you to war. All of a sudden, Khrushchev found the missiles and got rid of them. But Khrushchev said something, and that's why I'm saying people do not learn from history. They look just what's happening today. Khrushchev said, I do not have to find the United States militarily. They will destroy themselves. It took 60 years. And I am an optimist. I was always an optimist. I will die an optimist. And I am convinced that the pendulum will swing back, okay, and will be in the middle. But it will get worse before it gets better. And the best example that I can give is DEI. I spoke on TV and everything else. I was against DEI because in many ways it's racist, but I did not like the word E, equity. In the most equal society in the world, communism. Okay, you always have a group of people that are above everybody else. There is no such thing as complete equality. I believe in equal opportunity. And, right now, as you can see, a lot of the military, major organization, they got rid of it. And now with Trump, he's getting rid of it altogether. But slowly, it had to get worse, okay, until finally people woke up. And the same thing what's happening today in the world. Eventually, it will get worse. People will wake up and things will go back to the middle.
Well, many people don't understand that the United Nations itself is a communist organization. It was founded to bring about the one world order. If you look at all their doctrine, they plan to bring about the rule of Satan over the planet. These are not my opinions. We've got all the pedophilia and the stuff that came out of the Nazi Party, which was all this ancient stuff that they've been practicing over time. All the experience, like a lot of people are for, oh, well, you should give your 9-year-old a mastectomy like Rosie O'Donnell did with her daughter. What people don't understand, where do you think they got all these experiments? Do you think that some people just volunteered to have their penis reshaped into female parts? No, this was all done in not only programs of the Nazis, but further conducted into the United States and South America with all the extracted Nazis from Project Paperclip. And if you even look at the documents from the 60s, the guy who was running the program that were supposedly the CIA wasn't involved, it all came to light in the 70s. His name was also Mangles. So they just like again, these people get extracted because they win the war and they've got all the booty and all the money. They get extracted and they go somewhere else. And we've seen the entire world collapse and all democratic and even authoritarian governments collapsed by this same power structure. The Nazi Party did not lose World War II. The German people lost, but the Nazi Party
Right.
is alive and well with many operatives in every culture in the world. And this is again to bring about the New World Order. I used to work in Geneva. When you went to the United Nations, right on the front of it says, those who do not serve Lucifer shall not enter here, something like that. That's a rough translation from France. And so when we're calling on the United Nations, their founding principle is to remove the male-female gender,
It's
legalize
a it's a
pedophilia.
cesspool of hate.
When?
It's a cesspool of hate. The
Well, right. And,
UN.
and, and it's not to bring the nations together, it's to unite them under one government and one religion and one military because they say religion is the thing that divides everyone and causes all the wars. But if they have one religion and one government, then what do they need a military for if we're all living in peace? So
Yeah,
they can implement, I mean, it literally, you can read their doctrine. It's to
right.
bring about the rule of Satan on the planet.
Yeah,
Communism is about turning everything upside down and inverting everything that was once good is now bad, and everything that was once bad is now good. And we're
right.
living through this moment in time.
Right. Now, the other thing that I also want to say, everything starts with the Jews, but it does not end there. Okay, it goes to other group of people and everything else. But what I really want to talk about uh, in the war of in Gaza, what's happening over there? It's not against the civilian; it's against the terrorist group. Uh, Later on, if you want to, we can talk about it. But what I really want to say something. Uh, the world is taking, okay, Hamas's numbers that Israel is calling it, they call it genocide, that they killed 40,000 Gazans. People are forgetting that at least half of them were combatants. But regardless, let's take Hamas's number, 40,000. How many people have heard of uh, Congo? They murdered 500,000 people. How many people have heard of Sudan and everything else? So remember one thing, no Jews, no news. Everything. Okay.
Well,
So
they
we have,
actually murdered over 10 million people in the Congo and funded by the United States and China and the European
right.
factions. So I do cover
Nobody,
Africa. Yeah.
nobody talks about it. Nobody talks about it.
Well,
But here,
we've been bombing the heck out of Somalia for the last 2 weeks while they've got us talking about Jeffrey Epstein. Whenever they make up a story like this, there's not one new piece of information about Jeffrey Epstein. I could have told you everything they said on the news 10 years ago. And I'm a person who lives off grid in the middle of nowhere. So if our intelligence agencies couldn't find it. So whenever they've got the Epstein thing and also Barack Obama. There's nothing new in the news reports about Barack Obama, just finally that the report is the government's finally pretended they're noticing after 15 years, right?
right.
So this is all a deception. So they're blocking what's really going on. The continued funding of the wars worldwide, all of the young people that will never have children, that will never be there for their parents, who would be there for their grandparents, all these innocent young people that are dying on every side in every war that's going on right now, because people and humanity are realizing what's going on every day. I see people, as they say in the independent media, that people are waking up, but the things I tried to tell people about 10 years ago are mainstream today. They have a saying that the conspiracy theorists have run out of things to say because everything they've been talking about for the last 50 years has come true.
Right.
So we have to be cognizant of whatever they're telling us on the news is probably wrong, and we should be looking over here, like you pointed out. The war in the Congo just ended, supposedly. That's going to be amazing for the Congolese people. But again, what is the strongest growth in religion in Congo and Africa right now? The Catholic Church. So,
They took out God from schools.
well,
Okay.
right, but the Catholic Church at the high levels has absolutely nothing to do with God either, as we've exposed in many, many episodes, right?
Right.
So that it's not, it's the everyday people like us. We're not speaking against the average people that belong to any religion or background. We're speaking of these same familial lines who've repeatedly committed the same crime. And if you don't believe that, if you want to see who the Rothschilds are, you can trace their family line back to when Jesus in the Bible says those who hurt children should be drowned or whatever. There's a saying where
Yeah.
they should be thrown with a rock under their neck because their name during Jesus's time was Sassoon. So these families have been doing, they had the trafficking up through the Roman Empire all the way into Turkey and Romania and through the Ukraine. So these same bloodlines come. That's just one bloodline. They've got, in Asia, they've got their bloodlines there. In Africa, they've got their bloodlines there. A lot of people don't understand that during the slave trade, it was the blacks that they literally brought the slaves out to the ocean. So it was under Admiralty law. And it was the tribal blacks who were getting rid of the blacks that they didn't like and selling them into slavery. And many of the people, like for instance, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden's family have been directly involved in the human slave trade for 1,000 years, yet they're running our country and pretending that they want to help all the people who've been set back by the slave system. So we're in a massive hypocrisy right now, and I'm so glad that you're out there confronting some of the evilness and some of the myths so we can get down to the humanity of all these situations because it really is the everyday people who are going to rise against this tide. There's only millions of them, and there's billions of us, and there's hope. There's hope and faith, I believe.
So obviously you had some questions for me.
Sure, sure. Okay, so well, I was just kind of curious a little bit. So you left Germany, you were saved by this woman, and she gave you extra food, or did she actually rescue you? And then how did you end up getting back to Romania after the
Okay.
concentration camp?
Yeah. Okay. So interestingly enough, okay, uh, the German woman, okay, possibly gave me more than just milk, but I did not ask my parents. So I do not want to add things that I'm not sure of. Okay, I do not want to embellish my story. I
Okay.
try to be as correct as I can be and as truthful as I can be. So it's quite possible she gave me more than just milk, but I have no idea.
How old were
Uh,
you?
I was probably about 2.5 years old.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay, because when my parents and I were deported by the Romanians, I was only a year and a half. In 1944, the Russians, the Red Army, liberated the camp and it became again part of the former Soviet Union. And for 2 years, since 1944 to 1946, I don't remember. I think my father told me something, but I don't remember. So we were somewhere in the former Soviet Union. Because we were deported by the Romanians in 1946, the Romanian government allowed a small group of Jews, my understanding is about 3,000, from the former Soviet Union to repatriate. My father, being an anti communist, decided to choose the lesser of two evils. And for whatever reason, he decided to settle in a very, very small town. It became only about between 32 and 35 years ago, it became a city. So you can imagine how small it was. And he settled over there. And I like to add some humor. So I'm saying that, okay, your audience should be afraid of me, okay, because I grew up in Transylvania, so I'm the Jewish Dracula. Humor, it's always helpful. So I grew up in Romania, went to school and everything else. And in 1961, after 12 years, because my father uh, okay, and asked for a visa to go to Israel. Finally, we got the visa, okay, after the Romanian government was bribed. And that's when we went to Israel in 1962, 1965. I served in the Israeli Air Force. And in 1968, okay, because of my mother's bugging me, since I was 28 years old, I was not married. She says, "Why don't you travel?" And I lost my interest. I wanted to travel in 62, but my aunt had breast cancer. And at that particular time, that was a death sentence. Okay, so my mother enlisted my father's help, and at every occasion she said, "Why don't you travel?" So finally, I'm the type of person that I like to compromise, but it has to be a win-win. And I realized that in my passport at that time it said that I was born in the former Soviet Union. So I knew that it will take 5 years to come here as a legal immigrant. And I said, "That's wonderful. My parents will get off my back, and who knows what happens in 5 years." Within a very short period of time, they changed the immigration laws, and it was based on profession. Why they needed accountants, I have no idea. But I got the visa, and without money, and without the language, America, Sami is coming. And that was, I lived in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. That's where I met my ex, got married, had my son, got divorced, went back to Israel, never intended to come back to the States. But again, my mother, she realized that I became, because I lived longer here than in Israel at that time. So she was very sensitive, and she said, "If you ever want to go back to the States, you have my blessing." And I said, "Mother, don't joke, because one day I may come and I will tell you I'm leaving." And she said, "That's fine." And that's what happened in 1988. Okay, I came back, and
So
right now New York is my final home.
was your first wife, was she also from a Jewish heritage, or was she like Wisconsin from the Midwest?
No, she was from Canada. Okay, her sister lived in Israel. She lived in Israel, and it was a funny story because I met her one time when I found out that she's here from Israel in a visit. So I said, "Forget it." And then all of a sudden, somebody called me and says, "I have somebody for you. Maybe you want to meet her." And guess what? It was the same person.
Okay,
That
well,
was her.
that's destiny. Yeah, yeah, that's
That was her
funny.
cousin.
Did they
But
even know each other, the two
uh,
people?
yes, because it was her cousin, and her cousin was friends with me.
That
So
is
she,
funny. Wow.
so
Wow.
I used to believe in coincidence, but once I started to talk in 2008, things have happened in such a rapid succession in ways that I cannot explain it. Does not make sense.
Is that
It's not.
Kismet
Yeah,
in Jewish
it's not
Kismet, where you
it's
two halves meet?
no Bashir in Jewish language Bashir. So right now I don't believe in coincidence anymore. I believe in meant to be Bashir. To give an example, how is it possible that somebody like me, that has no money, lives under the poverty line, okay, is not a philanthropist, and has a building in Togo, in Africa, that bears my name, Sami Steigman Center for Tolerance. How is it possible that somebody like me, okay, uh, with no money, with anything else, has become world known, okay, and I don't promote myself, and that's the funniest part. Things have happened in such a rapid succession, and I have no explanation for it. I can't explain it to you. So it's meant to be.
Well, you were born for such a time as this, as they say.
Right. And the interesting part is that I was close to that close 3 times. The third time changed completely my perspective. And this is something I want your audience to understand. You cannot change anybody. You can change only somebody's perspective. But to be able to change somebody's perspective, you must be knowledgeable on that particular subject of interest to you. So what happened the third time? Okay, I went to like Las Vegas, but here in the Northeast, I went to in New Jersey. It will come back to me. I forgot the name. On the way back, okay, I used to like to speed, and so I decided to, to be in the right lane, and it was drizzling, and I did not know that wet leaves are worse than ice, and somebody pushed me off the road, and I flew and hit, okay, a tree head on. The car completely totaled. Okay, although I had a seat belt, I cracked the windshield. And at the same time, I walked out without a scratch. And that was the moment. Call it epiphany, call it whatever you want to call it. That was the moment I said, when my time is coming, there is nothing I can do about it. Until then, I am not afraid of anything. And I travel, people are surprised at me that I use the subway at 12, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. And you're not afraid? And I say, no. And that was, the moment that changed my life.
Wow, that's a great story because some of us need to just what we call wake up. You have a choice and did I finish everything I was supposed to finish in my life? Why did God save me? You have
Yeah.
all these different questions. Why me and the person that was in the other car or in the
Well,
passenger seat, they passed. What's my purpose now?
my motto in life is I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to be. Interestingly enough, I had a girlfriend. And we all have a tendency to identify ourselves by our profession, by our jobs, how much money you make, the beautiful house, the spouse, different ways. When I introduced my girlfriend to some of my friends, she used to say, "Hi, my name is Anita. I'm bipolar. Who cares? Who asked you?" But that was her identity. So, but I'm saying what happened to me does not identify me. What identifies me is what I do. And my choice in life is within my means to be a happy person. And I tell the young people, I don't have the best of everything else, but I make the best of everything I have.
And you live to see this day
Yes.
by many grace of God situations. So,
Yeah.
I do a lot of history on different movements, and I've studied, European history for the last 1,000 years. And so, this is a question maybe you can answer for some of my, I haven't been able to find the answer myself. So originally, Zionism started in the 1850s, and it was the Lutherans who were settling down in that part of the world. And they were actually under the Zoroastrian construct of Zionism, like the millennial. That's like a 3,000-year old, how a lot of things get wrapped into modern religion. And then, like during the war, Hitler was letting some Jews go to Israel, but other ones were being sent to the death camp. So was there a feud between different groups in the Jewish community where some sided,
Well,
like it's always confused me, like why was that occurring and what was the backdrop on that?
well, the way I know it is the Zionist movement started because of the Dreyfus, okay, thing. You know about the Dreyfus.
No.
Dreyfus, what happened is he was in the military in France, and he was accused of being a traitor. Later on, they found out that the traitor actually was a Hungarian military man, and he transferred it to Dreyfus. Emile Zola wrote a piece. He said, "J'accuse, I accuse," and in Theodor Herzl, when he found out about the Dreyfus affair, he decided, okay, at a conference to start the Zionist movement. A lot of people are using right now Zionism to hate Israel, whatever it is. But for me, Zionism, in very simple terms, is the right of the Jewish people to have their own country and to decide their own future. Very simple term. Okay, you have many Christian countries, Muslim countries, and everything else. There is only one Jewish country. And also, what I wanted for people to understand that during the Holocaust, Jews died because they did not have a country. On our Memorial Day, National Memorial Day, we remember the people that died for us to have a country. And so
So
right
they more or
now,
less adopted I mean, it's well documented that the Lutherans were the
yeah,
ones who started the
yeah,
Zionist
it was
movement.
adopted. And
Yeah.
like anything else, it takes a long time, okay, for an idea being totally new and against what most people believe at that particular time to take hold. And eventually it happened, but it took a very long time. It was, I believe, in 1897 or something like that, in the late 19th century. So, but that was the way I know it. It was because Theodor Herzl, okay, had that conference, okay, because he believed in, uh, okay, in a Jewish state. But when you mentioned Hitler, Hitler, his initial goal, which a lot of people may not know, was not to murder the Jews. His initial goal was to have a Germany free of Jewish people. And he offered, okay, different countries in Africa and different places to allow Jews to come in. The major issue that happened during those days, nobody wanted the Jews. And that was one of the things, they had no place to go. Okay, the idea of exterminating the Jews came only when they annexed Poland on September 1st, 1939, and World War II started. The reason is because here in Germany, he did not want any Jews. And in Poland, that was annexed, became part of the Greater Germany, he found 3.3 million Jews. What the hell did he do with them? And that came the idea of exterminating the Jews. Actually, the first concentration camp was in Germany, Dachau. And the Nazis did not target the Jews. They targeted their political enemies, the communists. It so happened that most of the communists were Jews, but he did not target initially the Jewish people. And a lot of people do not know the history, do not understand. They look at only at today, and so a lot of misconceptions, a lot of negative theories float around
Well,
the world.
from the advertisements and stuff I've seen that the German government was doing, but previous to the war, they wanted the Jews to bring their money to invest in the Palestine, Israel area. So they actually had pretty active campaigns you can look up where they were encouraging people to migrate there on their own and bring some of their wealth to develop that part of the country. So as you know,
Uh, that I am not familiar with that. I'm not familiar with that. I do know that he wanted people to go to different countries, primarily African countries, because the European governments did not want the Jews. But yes, until what do you call until Kristallnacht, Jews could leave
I see.
willingly. Okay, and that was his goal for them to leave. After Kristallnacht, it was the first time that the German people became violent against the Jews. Okay, after that, it was extremely difficult for the Jews to leave. Okay.
And do you
Uh,
think that the Azov battalion in the Ukraine has anything to do with weren't you kind of under the Nazis? There's still a large Nazi contingent in the Ukraine. I've seen letters from Hitler
well,
himself
you know,
writing letters to the Nazis
well,
in
uh,
Ukraine, telling them to
I,
knock
I,
off.
okay, I'll talk about Ukraine, but
Okay.
try to be very specific in words. In my opinion, there are no Nazis today. There are people that believe in the Nazi ideology, and they are called neo-Nazi. When
Right.
we're using the word Nazi, we are talking about the past. When we are using neo-Nazi, we're talking about the present. Now, here is something about Ukraine. By the way, as far as the biggest perpetrators, okay, the biggest perpetrators were the Ukrainians. They murdered voluntarily. They murdered 1.5 million Jews. The second group of people that were extremely cruel against the Jews were the Poles. And the third one, very few people know, were the Romanians. The Romanian troops rounded up 19,000 Jews from Odessa and burned them alive. In my opinion, those were the three groups, okay, in the order Ukrainians, Poles, Romanian. In Ukraine, what happened, because we don't learn from the past, there was a time in the beginning, uh, people do not understand a communist leader, somebody like Putin, who was part of the KGB. All he wanted initially, he wanted the area, okay, where the Russians were murdered in the areas that was part of Ukraine. He wanted that one to annex it, and he wanted the world to recognize Crimea as being part of the Russia. It was part of the Russia, but the world did not officially recognize it. So in the beginning, if they would have given that, he would have been satisfied. But there were two countries that objected to a ceasefire. There were two attempts. And I don't know if your people know it. It's United States and Germany. And I have spoken on TV against giving money, okay, in ammunition to the Ukrainians. Because, in my personal opinion, the Ukrainians are not going to win over the Red Army, over the Russian army.
I concur.
Okay, Russia cannot occupy Ukraine. It's too big. Okay, so basically, the only thing was happening by empowering Ukraine to fight the Russians. Okay, all that's happening is innocent people will die and the world will continue. At this particular stage, Putin does not want to cede anything. There was a time that he would have, but we missed the time. And now, as you can see, even with Trump, he does not want, to cede anything. And he's going to continue unless Trump somehow, through sanctions, will able to force him to sit down and to talk. But I am not very optimistic.
Well, this is the situation. The way I see it is, the United States has been heavily involved. If you look at what's happened in the Ukraine, Ukraine was one of the largest industrial nations, I think seven or eight, even after the collapse of communism. It's one of the most corrupt countries in the world. They're known for money laundering. They're known for child and women trafficking. They're one of the top countries, according to Interpol, for human. And they're also one of the top for where do you think they were processing all the heroin that was coming out of Afghanistan? It's a hub of the deep state. And of course, the regular, beautiful people of Ukraine and Russia are dying under this stupid war that
Right.
the United States, this has been my theory since the war first started. I didn't read it anywhere or anything, but we now understand that the war is really a proxy war for the West and that Russia is really fighting the European powers basically today. They've shown themselves. And it's the same people that have tried to invade Russia for the last 400 years, from Napoleon to the Germans to the British, all these different groups of people are just using our war and our ammunition. They had the buffer of the Ukraine, so they were never able to march in. So they've used the last 4 or 5 years to destroy the infrastructure, to murder all the young people. And when the time comes, the West will be able just to march through straight to Russia, which has always been their goal for a long, long time. And I know
It's a
I'm
very
a person from the West, but
right.
uh, the powers that be and the warmongers are the ones that running things, not Zelensky and most
Yeah.
likely not even Putin.
Okay. Very interesting theory. Okay. But what I am saying is that, for instance, like I said before, Kennedy could not allow to have a nuclear power 90 miles from it. So
Yes.
the war, besides wanting the West to recognize Crimea part of Russia, and also to have the areas where the Russians, because people are forgetting that the Ukrainians murdered about 18,000 Russians. Okay,
Yes.
okay, they're forgetting. So he wanted those two things in the beginning. Okay, and because the West, they have many people that have said, well, since they attacked him, okay, because he could not afford when Ukraine wanted to be part of NATO. Okay, Putin could not afford to have a nuclear power, at its doors.
I
Okay,
completely agree with you. We're the ones who reneged. I was living in Russia
right.
when they made
So,
these deals.
right, and there are theories that, for instance, if Russia wins, then China will occupy Taiwan, whatever. Okay, there are many excuses. There are many different theories. But I am saying is we made a mistake. We missed it. Okay, to give Putin a way to save face. Right now, it's very late, and unless Trump, okay, will be able somehow to sanctions or whichever it is to force Putin, okay, to sit down at the table with Zelensky, okay, the war will continue and innocent people will die. So, and we missed a great opportunity for, okay, and we used the wrong excuse.
Well, and because these warmongers don't want the war to end. Who's gone in and captured all the property? And we got Monsanto, the largest breadbasket in Europe. They've got all the biochemical companies and all the ones that have destroyed our health and our society over here with all their chemicals. We've got the military industrial complex. We've got BlackRock that's already got contracts to do all the building. And I completely agree with you that Putin is no longer going to stop. And as he says himself, they're just going to give a chance for them to build up their munitions and they're going to come right back at him. So he might as well while he's got the upper hand. And if anyone thinks that the Russian military is going to be beaten by the Ukrainian military, and the reality is the United States hasn't won a war since World War II if we really are honest about the situation. And we're not going
Right,
to win this war. And if you really, like, right before this all happened, if you want to understand the East and West and the power structures that go back to Roman times and even before that, the Ukrainian church kicked out the Orthodox Church. They were burning the churches, imprisoning and murdering some of their priests, and they brought in the Roman Catholic Church as to be the religion and the one. So they've sided, like I said, this is a much bigger thing because the battle between East and West is really, the Roman Empire collapsing and those battle structures still arguing with each other all these years later and trying to capture everybody. The whole New World Order, one world government is really the construct of the Roman Empire. So these
right.
people have been for years. If you don't understand history, you're not going to really understand what's going on there. But I think,
That's exactly my point. People look at what's happening today. They look only at today without looking at the history. How did we come to the point where we are today? Look, Putin is not a nice person.
no,
Okay?
I'm not siding with
Okay.
Putin. No.
Okay. However, okay, he is not crazy like Hitler. He is a rational dictator. And as long as the military is with him, okay, he will continue the war.
And there's this big myth about China and how cozy that China. One thing communists understand that communism is about lying, stealing, oppressing, and ravaging your society. So the Russians are on the border with the Chinese. They're no great friends. Yes, they do trade agreements and all this, but there's no great love. And recently, a high-level Chinese military guy defected, and he brought the plan to Putin because China was planning on occupying Russia after they were destroyed by this war. And those documents have just been released by high-level
I didn't,
Chinese who went
I
to
did not
Russia
know
last.
that. I did not know that because that's not in the news.
Well, because I don't watch the news. I watch the news to find out what I shouldn't be looking at. I'm on a couple radio channels every other week, and they ask me to come on and talk about stuff, and I'm like, no, I don't even want to talk about whatever, because it's not really the story. Let's talk about what's
Uh,
going on over here, but they're trying to distract us with this story. You just have to, immediately when they come out with something big like the Epstein files or whatever, I started searching the internet. And they were getting a pushback because people don't like the funding of all these wars everywhere. And they also,
Even Trump is not interested in the Epstein files.
well,
I mean, he said there is nothing, there is not interested.
right. And even you have, yeah, these different groups of people who were on and on about it. But again, as we were discussing, I was discussing on a show I was on earlier this morning that the Epstein is a puppet. He's a persona, right? He's just an intelligence agency. A lot of these high-level wealthy people are involved with intelligence somehow. I worked and lived in the Communist
Right,
Union.
right.
Yeah, I was part of this circle of people.
And at his height, he was involved with a lot of very powerful people. So it was also networking, to meet people and everything else. So it's not necessarily what they try to. He
Well,
doesn't have any. He didn't write anything down. He
he
just made
was
parties.
he was involved with Gaddafi. I've been watching the news for years and living around the world, you get different kinds of news depending on where you're at. But he was laundering money for Gaddafi. He was laundering money in the Iran-Contra. He was also a citizen of Saudi Arabia, which was there's large human trafficking young women from the West and Ukraine and Russia. He was heavily involved there. Our John Brennan, the guy who was supposedly the head of our intelligence, he converted to the Muslim religion and was operating on half of the Saudi government. And Jeffrey
That-
Epstein was getting his money from the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia to build the second Fantasy Island because the government had closed down the first Epstein Island.
well,
So,
this is exactly okay. The media. Nobody knows about it because the media. Okay, now you are interested. You have the podcast. You have lived under the communist country, so you know exactly what's happening. Most of the people don't have that knowledge, that interest in studying, so they watch the news, and based on the news, nobody knows anything about those things.
you know what the most dangerous time there is in our country is when CNN and Fox agree on something.
Wait a minute, what did they agree on? Because I
Well,
don't
what
watch
I'm
the
saying, they
news.
all agreed on the vaccinations, or they all agreed that we should go to war in Iraq, right? Whenever there's something they both agree on, I'm getting ready for a big lie, a big letdown, a big deception, because the fact that, the media is meant to keep us divided so we don't react the way we should.
As a matter of fact, very seldom do I watch the news. The only thing that I watch is the reruns. My memory is not as good as it used to be, so I watch the reruns. For me, it's a brand new show. I've seen it many times, so I'm not interested anymore. Because you have talking heads, they talk and they don't know what they're talking about. Okay, so it's just yak, 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 and nothing happens.
Well, this is a common thing I get. People will say to me, "Well, where did you learn that?" And I'm like, "Well, I researched it." I said, "Where did you learn your information?" They're like, "The news." So I said, so the information you get is right because you heard it on the news, but the information I get from actually researching the topics and going to the history and going to history from other countries, because this is what got me on the path. I've lived around the world, and wherever you go, the history is different. So whose story is it,
Right,
right? So
right,
you really
right,
have to
right.
dig and find out what the real stories are. And once you understand, then you can make your own decision. But the fact that they're telling us what to think is just another MK mind control Project Mockingbird kind of situation. They
Well,
destroyed
this,
they
right. Well,
destroyed
the
all of
same,
our real
yeah.
history books 100 years ago.
Well, it's the same thing with Israel. They had tried to. Israel is a country. It's a jungle of its own. Okay, beautiful country, beautiful people, technologically extremely advanced. But interestingly enough, people, especially in the West, they try to relate Western concepts to Israel about Jews, justice, and everything else. You cannot relate what you have in the United States or in the West to Israel. It's different. It's a different government. It's a different, you know, way people think and everything else. And you cannot impose your view on somebody else or believe that the other country should behave, okay, like you. And Israel is held to a standard that no other country has ever been held. And my father used to have a saying, okay, which I personally love it. And he said, the Jews are more Catholic than the Pope himself.
Well, don't even get me started on the Pope. A majority of my channel is
Okay,
recording the crimes of
but
the
it's interesting.
papacy. Yeah.
They have to be better than anybody else. So, okay, it creates okay a problem.
Okay, well, I know we've been talking about a lot of heavy topics. Why don't you kind of explain to us, how you've been able to hold on to your faith in God and hope for the future through all this? I know you speak about that a lot.
Well, I grew up the Orthodox way, modern Orthodox, but I grew up the Orthodox way. And one of the things is modern Orthodox. You have certain values that teach you how to live. I have many opportunities to stray, but because I grew up religiously, I was grounded, and that did not allow me to stray. Okay, so the code that was embedded in me, okay, kept me grounded. Uh, since I got divorced, okay, and I lost my son, basically, I'm not performing all the duties that a religious Jew is supposed to do. But at the same time, uh, people have asked me if I lost faith in God, and I said no.
Did
Okay,
you lose your son in an accident or just from family split?
no, that was a personal decision. Okay, so I live alone. I don't keep kosher. I don't cook and everything else. So basically, I live under the poverty line, so I cannot afford some of the kosher food and everything else. So basically, I don't eat pork, but I'm not really religious. Okay, but uh, my decision, okay, uh, not to be religious is a personal one, has nothing to do with the Holocaust. A lot of the people, okay, especially the agnostics, the one that said, how could God allow something like that to happen? God had nothing to do with it. The murders were performed by people. Other people, because of the miracle that they survived, the miracle of establishing of the state of Israel, became very religious. In my particular case, like I said before, it was a personal decision. But I still believe there is something we cannot live for ourselves. There is something beyond us. Okay? And call it whatever you want to call it. Call it God, call it whatever you want. But there's something more than just you.
Well, can you feel that in the air right now with the big pushback that so much part of society around the world is pushing back and opening their eyes, and people who have
Yeah,
jobs like
and
mine?
yeah, I think one of the major issues is the fact that God has been taken away from schools. So
Yes.
a lot of the young people don't have those core values that will keep them grounded. The other thing is that you have a lot of mixed marriages. The issue with the mixed marriages is I don't care if you raise a child Christian, I don't care if you raise him Jewish, I don't care if you raise him whatever religion you want. I don't care. But don't teach him both of them because they are not grounded. Okay, they don't know where they belong, and they're looking uh, something to belong to because they don't feel belonging completely to Judaism, to Christianity. So they're looking for something that they can belong to, and it can be drugs, it can be different cultures, whatever it is. And that's why I'm saying is there has to be one particular code, call it whatever you want, Judaism, Christianity, Buddhism, whatever you want to call it. But there has to be a certain code of life that you have to believe in. And that will keep you grounded. And at that particular time, you will not need to look for something to feel that you belong to. But
And I agree with you. There's so many
that is one
people
of the things that
searching to.
concerns me.
Well, I was saying there's so many people that are searching today because they have this emptiness inside. And I think this is why we were talking about DEI and all these other uh, movements and things that are going on in society because people don't have anything to hold on to and they're looking for some meaning and some importance in life. And they're easily, when you don't have a strong foundation of faith in God, you're going to be
Exactly.
prone to be attracted to all these other things that promise to fill your void. And they don't.
Right.
They most likely, if we look around at so many of our younger generations, they're lost today because they've been convinced that the traditional values and belief systems are no longer valid and that they need to branch out and take on all these other crazy things. But really, all they're doing is filling the void that living without God has left them in.
Right. And it hasn't to be, it has, doesn't have to be God, whatever you believe. That has to be somebody that is beyond, okay, yourself, okay? And call it whatever you want. You know, it's because some people do not want to use the word God, which is a mistake, but that's their issue. But they don't have the core values, okay? They're not grounded. And there is a void. There is a void in their lives. And
So
that's why
one,
they hang on. That's why they hang on to stupid ideas.
and there's a lot of really stupid ideas out there right now, I must say.
Too many.
Doing. Well, like you said, we're taking a pendulum swing back, but first we have to become aware of our true reality, and then we can decide how we're going to solve our problems as a society
Yeah.
and how we're going to bring people together to avoid what our next war is a nuclear war, which means total annihilation of all of us. So who's really going to win in that
Right.
situation?
Now, you just brought something that's important to me. I tell the young people, I ask the young people, he says, who is the most important person in your life? And most of them say, my parents, my mother, my teacher. And I say, that's incorrect. It starts with three letters Y O U. If you want to be loved, you have to learn to love yourself first. You want to be respected, you have to learn to respect yourself. You cannot ask from anybody. And I tell them, you cannot give something that you don't have. If you don't love yourself, you cannot give love to somebody else, to other groups, to other people, whatever it is. And that's why I try to teach them the most important person in somebody's life is YOU.
And I focus on that too. I frequently say we can't control what's going on in the world around us. We can only control what we're doing, what we're feeling, how we're acting. And
Right.
if we take control of ourselves, then we can see the progress. And just like all the people in the independent media, I consider myself a digital soldier because I'm fighting the war of misconceptions and lies that have been told to all of us, regardless of our race, religion, or background.
God bless you for what you do. That's very, very, very important. And I wish there would be more people like you. I have met people like you, but I'm saying just like in Germany, what happened during the Holocaust, there were many good people. Unfortunately, not enough, okay, to stop, what happened.
Exactly. Well, Sammy, why don't you tell us how we can get in contact with you? There might be some listeners that want to
Yeah.
have you on their show or have you speak at one of their events. So,
Okay. So first of all, my initial name, my first name is SAMI. Okay. And don't make the mistake of thinking that this is short for Samantha. I am not a girl. I never
are
was.
you sure?
The other interesting thing is my name is spelled Steigmann, Steigmann, with two N's. It is the German spelling. When I became an American citizen, they decided whoever put my name in, took out one N. They wanted to make sure that I'm Jewish. And I went to court to reinstate my second N. I love my name. Okay. So to get in touch with me is Sammy 1939 at Gmail. That's my email. Okay. At the same time, I have a website, and it is Sami, SAMI Speaks, one word.com, SamiSpeaks.com. And if you want to contact me in person and ask questions, I will answer all of them. Is 646-418-0875. And I would love to hear from you. And if you disagree with me, okay, I would love to hear it because maybe you have a point that I have changed my mind a number of times. Because every time somebody comes up with something and I can relate to it, my presentation today is completely different than when I started because I learned a lot of things, accumulated from listening to other people talking and relating to what they had to say. So my presentation, my thoughts have changed. And don't be afraid, okay, to change your opinions. And one thing is, each one of us has a very strong voice. Do not be afraid to talk, okay, and do not let anybody to shut you down.
Okay, well, thanks for those words of encouragement. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the show, and I'll put Sammy's information in the comment section below. So, thank you for joining us today and sharing your life journey. It's important for the younger generation to understand the true cost of war and the devastation it causes for years to come. And why is this knowledge so important? It's because we need to work together to prevent these atrocities from occurring ever again. As the world sits on the precipice of World War III, I encourage you to embrace the words of Sammy and some of the things I've said on my channel and actually look within yourself, like President Kennedy asks us to look within ourselves, to examine our thoughts about war, because man created his own problems. Therefore, he can fix his own problems. This is from a less popular speech by Kennedy, but the words were amazing and they still have meaning today. So remember, always do your own research and come to your own conclusion. As always, this presentation is made in hopes that never again will the truth be lost in translation. Thank you for listening. This is Simone and Sammy signing off for today.